when we pronounce them, don't worry about the recording. It will not show your face. It will only show the shared screen. So that people who miss the class they can watch it. So mantra meditation, we're using sacred words. And when we pronounce the words ourselves, whether we whisper or say it out loud, we create a certain vibration using our own vocal cords. And with this vibration, it's a higher frequency vibration. It can shift our energy, our mental space. Um, we also have a musical meditation where we use music to help us get into a more meditative state. It's actually happening next Friday at Newton, 7:30 p.m. It's a community class, so donations are welcome. We have some volunteers who will cook vegetarian dinner for us. So if you're interested, I will send the link later in the group chat. So this series, out of meditation, we have our speaker, PK, or Pradeep Kumar. You can call him PK like Pai Kia. He is actually my very first such a wisdom kind of teacher that I ever met in my life, probably about maybe 9 years ago or 10 years ago. I met him. He printed a very big banner that shows that had a very big word, the essence of life. It's a very free class, and it was on a day I was free, and then I went and I kept going because his wife make very good food. So he got me hooked on through my belly. But he's very experienced in educating us in terms of, so when we want to practice something, we need to convince our logical mind first to understand why we need to practice something, what's the benefit. So he's really an expert in explaining all this. And then at the end, I'll just do a little practical. We'll do like 5 minutes of breath work and mantra meditation. Sigi and Shan, do you have any questions?
Not for time being.
So feel free. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, not for me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the response. So feel free to make yourself comfortable. You're welcome to keep your camera off or on, up to you. If you're having a dinner, go ahead. You can listen and have your dinner. Just towards the last 5-10 minutes when we are practicing our breath work, then you need to be in a more focused mode. You might need to stop your eating.
Okay.
With that, we shall start. We are actually waiting for one more person. She says she's joining, but she's not here yet.
I think let's just start.
Yeah, let's
because
start.
it's not fair to the rest of them who have been punctual. So Park Segi and Shan, wonderful to have you in today's class. My name is Pradeep Kumar.
Your camera is off, by the way.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Let me see. It is on. Can you?
I think you have maybe you have a physical blocker for the camera.
It's on. I can see him.
Yeah.
Oh, really? I cannot see him.
Uh-huh.
Why like that?
Oh, you need spiritual vision to see me. Just joking. All right. So thank you very much for joining today's class. Anxiety is a very common word which is used, in today's corporate context. Very often you hear words like stress, anxiety, unable to cope with workloads, unsure about the direction of life, not understanding what the purpose of life is supposed to be, right? And therefore, we have actually curated a series like this, where once in 2 weeks, we come together to discuss a topic. We have already completed 10 of these webinars, probably another 1 or 2 more, and then we would continue with a brand new series, which essentially goes deep into the teachings from ancient wisdom, right? Ancient wisdom from the Vedic texts like the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, etc. So we try to bring spirituality in a very relatable manner to the corporate audience. I work as a regional director for a very large company in Asia. And, I'm really passionate about this because I've realized that whatever has been in store in these ancient wisdom, be it from Buddhism, from Hinduism, from Christianity, they are all really relatable even today, right? If we are able to reflect on this wisdom, if we are able to reflect on how these nuggets could be brought back to our corporate world, I can assure you that we can actually live a much, much more enriching life, right? So if you have any questions, just feel free to stop me and I'll try to answer your question. Otherwise, we can keep the questions towards the end of today's class. I assure you I'll try to finish everything up in 1 hour, right? Okay, so today's class is on anxiety. Let's look at, just a minute. Let's look at what the definition of anxiety is. Essentially, anxiety is a feeling of fear, dread, or uneasiness that can be a normal reaction to stress, right? So normally it starts off with, regular stress. Oh, I just have got a lot to do. I do not know where to start. But if it lingers on, then it becomes anxiety, right? And it can also be characterized by physical changes like increased blood pressure, lots of worried thoughts, etc. So I've got a schematic over here which explains, the slight difference between stress and anxiety. Um, just for our context, we can, basically say that anxiety is a little bit of a prolonged stress, right? Normally, in a stressful situation, it is a response to a recognized threat. But in a situation where one is anxious, where there's anxiety, it could be for reasons which the person do not know. Essentially, what has happened is the stress has increased to such a high level where the person is unsure where it's actually being triggered from, right? So the slides will be available. You can actually watch this later. You can go through the slides later, or you can take a screenshot if you want, right? So what are some of the causes of anxiety, right? So social and environmental factors, it could be like, some of us, we grow up in social isolation. We may have some childhood trauma, some negative life events, sometimes societal pressures, abuse, or sometimes domestic violence, and a lack of access to mental health resources. So we classify all of these as social and environmental factors. It could be psychological factors like, it's the person's personality type. It could be a history of anxiety or other mental disorders, right? So that's classified as psychological factors, or it could be a biological factor, which may include physical or mental health problems, such as living with a serious, ongoing, and life-threatening physical health condition, inflammation, allergies, and other physical factors include, resilience to stress, which can increase or can be decreased by things you are maybe born with, right? So those are biological factors. As far as the context of today's presentation is concerned, we will not address the social environmental factors. We will not dwell into these psychological factors and biological factors because that is really out of context, because anyone who is going through anxiety due to these factors will certainly need to seek professional help, right? So that's really out of context. What we will be focusing on would be the other factors, such as, lots of change, uncertainty. Like, if you look at today's corporate environment, it's beyond the VUCA world. Every 2-3 months, there's a change in the strategy of the organization. How do you make this relatable to different levels of the organization, right? There's just so much happening in the business context today. It could be, feeling under pressure. So much of pressure. There's just so much going on. You do not know where to start. It could be long working hours. Gone are the days where, if it's an 8-hour duty, you are normally done within 5 hours, and the other 3 hours, it's, just relaxing. Gone are the days. I'm still in the office right now, right? Or it could be, sometimes retrenchments, being out of work, financial issues, housing problems, homelessness, right? Drug or alcohol abuse or misuse can also be a cause and maybe even worsen anxiety. So we will really focus on the other factors which cause anxiety, and we'll focus on how can we actually overcome this form of anxiety. Any questions? Okay, quite straightforward. So let's move on. Let me ask you a question. Is anxiety good or bad? What do you think, Pak Saji?
Uh, to me, it's good. It's not always bad.
Okay, wonderful. And why do you say that?
Because with anxiety, it depends on which direction we're trying to take it. The part that how to overcome that one.
Mhm.
If it's most of the time, it's quite a challenge for me,
Okay.
But until a certain stage where I can't, the anxiety is getting, then I try to, okay, then don't think about it. That's it.
Yes, yes. Sometimes ignorance can be bliss, lah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I agree. A little bit of anxiety, stress, sometimes it can be healthy. Because I realize for myself, when there's no stress, right? Um, the pressure is not there to complete stuff. The pressure is not there to finish stuff. I might get into a mode of complacency, right? So if there's healthy stress, it's amazing. It's wonderful. It keeps us, it just gets us going and going and going. But if it reaches a certain optimum, if it goes unchecked, that is where it can become really unhealthy, right? So we can't be entirely anxiety free. No, it can't be. Sometimes when you're driving to work, it can be a little bit anxious, right? It can be, stressful. Yeah. But we can make anxiety worthwhile by taking up meaningful responsibility, right? We don't want merely to be anxiety free because it leads to complacency, right? So how can responsibility make anxiety worthwhile? Because it gets you to become, a little bit more result oriented. There is a goal towards which you are working, right? So responsibility makes this kind of anxiety, this kind of stress really worthwhile, right? But how can you replace worthless anxiety, which is worrying, for no rhyme or reason, with worthwhile anxiety? Sheen, what do you think? How can we replace worthless anxiety with worthwhile anxiety?
Uh, I think if the worthless anxiety is more fear-based, and then the worthwhile anxiety is a bit more positive. So if you reframe it to a more positive outcome, then maybe that's how you should deal with it.
Wonderful, right? So worthless anxiety, it could be seen from the angle of fear. I agree with you, right? When there is excessive fear, then you feel that you are not in control of a situation, right? So worthwhile anxiety is where you know what you can control and what is beyond the remit of your control, right? So for example, if there's nuclear war going on in some parts of the world, is that something which you can control? Actually, no, right? We can control stuff which is happening within our family. stuff which is happening to ourselves, right? Stuff which is happening to, my department in the organization or my group in the university, etc. There's a lot more stuff which is just beyond our control. And that is what it means, worthless anxiety. Oh, how is, you know, my daughter, she teaches tuition, and she comes home and tells me about how some of the kids are like just having so much of anxiety. Oh, now there is war between Israel and Palestine. This is what is going to happen, and this is how it's going to be coming to Singapore. Brr, 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 brr. And we need to start, it's just the monkey mind just keeps on coming up with scenarios. That is worthless anxiety, right? So simple answer, whether it's fear-based or not fear-based, and understanding what is within our control and what is not within our control, right? And, sometimes it's also what we want, right? What we desire for ourselves. Life can be simple, right? Life can be really simple. But if we have got a lot of material desires, desire after desire. Once we have accomplished something, we want more. In the pursuit of a higher level of desire, sometimes that can also cause us lots of anxiety. Right? Today I have a Hyundai. Tomorrow I see my neighbor. Oh, he's just bought an electric car. There's a nice charger outside of his house. I need an electric car too. Why am I just being happy with a Hyundai? Oh, the other neighbor has just bought a Ferrari. That's what life is all about. I need to get a Porsche or a Ferrari, right? Therefore, what we are doing is we are just upping our level of desires. This is exactly, an old parable, right? There was once a king who came out from his palace one morning and he encountered a beggar. And the king asked the beggar, "What do you want?" And the beggar laughingly says, "You ask as though you can fulfill my desire." Right? And therefore the king was a little bit offended and he said, "Yes, of course I can do that." The beggar says, "Think twice before you promise anything." Right? The beggar was no ordinary beggar, right? Um, the beggar was sent by providence to teach this king a lesson, right? And therefore, what the king did was, he filled up the bowl with cash. Every time he filled up the bowl with cash, the cash disappeared. More cash went in. The entire, right, treasury was removed, was emptied to fill up this bowl. And every time it was filled to the brim, the money just disappeared. Jewels disappeared, etc. And the king was actually puzzled, right? Everyone was actually puzzled in the entire kingdom. And the king actually dropped at the beggar's feet and admitted defeat. He says, "You are victorious. Yeah. But before you go, just fulfill my curiosity. What is the secret of this begging bowl?" And the beggar humbly replied, "This is no secret. It is simply made of human desire. Every time it is filled to the brim, that desire goes off. And we have a new desire. Filled to the brim, another one more new desire appears." Right? So it's an amazing parable. I think it teaches us a lot about sometimes managing our desires. What is a want and what is a need? Right? So Vedic science actually explains that, the fundamental cause of this kind of anxiety is a misalignment between what the reality is and what our inner expectation is, or what our mind wants, right? So for example, as a parent, we may want our child to, be the top student in class. But what's the reality? There are other toppers in school, right? Your child may have a solid capability in another field, but we don't care about that, right? That's what I mean by understanding what the reality is and what our mind is telling us to do. Or it could be also a misalignment between what the mind is wanting. The mind wants a material object. I need this. I want this because it will make me happy. But deep down within our hearts, within the inner chambers of our heart, lies our spirit soul. And the spirit soul, being spiritual in nature, tells that I'm spiritual in nature. I will never ever be happy with a material cling. As I'm spiritual in nature, I'm the spirit soul, I can only be happy with spiritual bliss. All right. So this is like, bringing it to the next level altogether, where we understand, we will need to understand that everything which we are desiring for actually becomes zero when we leave this material world, right? Can be a ruler, can be the prime minister of a country, right? Could be the CEO of an organization. Forget about even the CEO leaving this world. Even when he leaves the corporation, everyone forgets what he has done for the organization. Because the material world just keeps on going and going and going. People do not have time, right? So these are fundamentally the two causes of anxiety. Our mind telling us, I want this, without understanding what the reality is. And number two, our mind is asking us for this. This material is going to be giving me the happiness, without realizing that, hey, actually, I'm not this material body. I'm just a spirit soul. The difference between a body which is living and a body which is not living or dead is the spirit soul, which is giving consciousness to the entire body. At the time of death, this particular spirit soul leaves the body. All right. So that spirit soul is spiritual in nature. And in order to give it bliss, it has to be spiritual bliss. And my good friend Hui will be providing you with an experience at the end of today's class on how do we actually invoke this spiritual bliss. So let's move on. There are three key words I would like you to remember today. It's 9:30. Number one is competition. Number two, expectations. And number three, regulations, right? So for us to manage our anxiety, it's important for us to recognize that, are we stressed up because of competition? Are we stressed up because we have set unrealistic expectations on ourselves? Or are we stressed up because we are not regulated in our lives? So I'm now going deeper into this topic. Are you all with me? Hui, any new participants have just joined?
No. Nobody. Everybody's
Oh,
just here.
okay. So far, everyone is catching what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so let's start with competition, right? One of the cause could be comparing ourselves with others. Comparing ourselves to others is a race we can never win because there will always be someone who is better than us, right? And this comparing mentality can actually trigger unrealistic expectations of ourselves that leads to feelings of stress, depression. Comparing ourselves to the optimal, the best, will always cause anxiety. So this brings us this concept of being mindful, right? What is being mindful? Being mindful means I'm focusing on the present. Whatever has passed, I do not have any control over it. When I'm mindful, I ask myself, what can I actually learn from the past? The past is teaching us lots of lessons. What can I actually learn from the past? And what can I do today to ensure that in the future I do not make such mistakes? Right? So that's what mindfulness is in a nutshell. Right? It's no longer about the past, it is what I can do right now so that the future will be better. What is in my control right now? Right? All I can do is I can give the best of my ability. That's all I can do, right? I can orchestrate the work environment such that I get people to help me. As a student, I can give my very best. At the same time, I can orchestrate my study environment such that I have the best of notes available. I reflect on my learnings, etc. Right? It's not just learning for the sake of learning, but also understanding how I can actually bring this to my real life. So that's what being mindful is all about. Being mindful also means that I understand what my capability is. I cannot be, there's only one person who can be the topper in school. There's only one person, right? You know, it is said that Albert Einstein said that everybody is a genius. But if we judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will always live its whole life believing that it is not intelligent, right? Each of us has been made by providence. Each of us have got a strength, right? It's up to us to understand where do I, really progress well? What is my sweet spot? What is my ikigai? Essentially, what really propels me? What excites me, right? And then try to leverage that strength of yours, right? So I have a child who, she did not do well in the first year in A levels. She had to retake her A levels. She was like so engrossed in her counselor activities. She failed her first year, and then second year it was like a wake up call for her. She did all right. Sadly, when she was sitting for her A level, she was bitten by the Aedes mosquito, and she ended up taking her A level exams in the hospital. She did all right, right? But when she went to university, she was smart to select the course which really excited her. And therefore, she did very well. She was not into sciences, additional maths, etc., was not her forte. And therefore, she selected something which was really close to her heart. So that's the meaning of, understanding where your strengths are and then leveraging it to the best of your ability. As we speak, Hui Mataji Hui, who is on this call, right? You may not know, but she is a pass out from NTU, right? She's a chemical engineer, but her calling was in teaching spirituality. Her calling was in helping people to understand the power of yoga, right? And therefore, she's living her purpose. Okay. So, once again, the first key word is competition. We need to be mindful about our abilities. Stop this comparison. A little bit of comparison, you may say it's healthy, etc., but it's important for us to understand what is our strength. All right. And sometimes in the pursuits of many, many, many dreams, we forget to be happy. This is a wonderful picture of the Caribbean, right? So there was this boatman who was in the Caribbean. He was underneath a palm tree. And a rich businessman who was on a holiday in the Bahamas, he came and he said, "Can you take me to the other side?" And the boatman said, "Yeah, no problem." And therefore he was rowing, simple boatman, he was rowing him to the other side. And then the businessman looked at him and said, "What do you do the whole day?" He says, "I just row people from one side to the other." And then the businessman said, "Like how long have you been doing this?" He said, "Oh, since I was 18 years old, I've been doing this. This is like already 30 years. And the businessman then goes saying, "Why don't you buy two boats?" He says, "Two boats?" The boatman said. The businessman said, "Yeah, with two boats, then you can make double the money. You can then employ one more person. You can make more money. You can make extra profits." And the boatman then asked him, "Okay, what will I do with the extra profit?" He said, "Oh, you can buy two more boats, right? What am I going to do with four boats?" He says, "Oh, once you have got four boats, then you can have a whole crew who can then you can make a company, right?" And then the boatman said, "Yeah, then what do I do with the company?" "Or you can expand to different parts of the Caribbean, right? And then once you make a company, you can expand to different parts of the Caribbean. You can make more money." And then the boatman said, "Okay, then what do I do?" He said, "Then you can float the company on the stock market. You can really make it big. You can get a killing." And the boatman said, "All right, great. Then what do I do with all the money?" "Once you have all the money, you can invest in properties. You can have fixed saving accounts. You can do whatever you want." And then the boatman said, "Yeah, then what do I do with that?" He says, "Then you can retire. You can retire early." And then the boatman looks at him and says, "Isn't that what I'm doing right now? I am happy with what I'm doing right now. I'm retiring under the beautiful palm trees. I'm keeping myself healthy by rowing people from one side of the island to another." Right? So sometimes in the pursuit of doing so many things, we just forget to be happy. Shin, does it make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does.
Okay, right. Right. So, you know, in the interest of time, I'll not really go through this part of the group discussion. We always compare ourselves to others. What results are actually achieved by comparison. Sometimes it can lead to, comparing with others and judging ourselves can be quite toxic, can be debilitating, and we become disconnected from the reality, right? Each of us is different. Each of us is different. We have our strengths, we have our weaknesses, but all of us are unique. One gem which I derive from the Bhagavad Gita, which is, the Bible of Hinduism, right? In a nutshell, you can call it the Bible of Hinduism, is that One must deliver himself or herself with the help of the mind and not degrade himself. The mind will keep on telling you, do this, do this, do this, do this. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul, and the mind can also be the enemy. If we are not able to subdue the mind can actually create havoc in our lives, right? So that's the first gem from the scripture. Now let me explain to you a little bit more. Earlier on, I explained to you that, deep down, we are a spirit soul and not the material body. Let me just share a little bit more about what the scriptures say about this, right? So we are a spiritual spark. We're just a spiritual spark, right? And we are covered by a material body. The same spiritual spark is there in a chicken, in a fish, in a plant, etc. Right? So we are a spiritual spark, or you can call it the soul. The soul has a subtle body called the mind, the intelligence, and the false ego. The mind is what dictates what I need to do. The mind is constantly telling me, right? It's like a monkey mind telling me what I need to do, what I need to focus on, blah, 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 blah. The mind is also a repository of all our experiences. The intelligence essentially is the discerning part of our subtle body. The intelligence is the one which will tell the mind, hey, focus on this. Don't do this. This is not going to be good for you in the long run. You may want to invest in this, right? So the intelligence is the discerning factor which somehow subdues the mind. And the third part of this subtle body, subtle simply means that you really can't see with your eyes. Scientists today are able to tell you this is the brain, but they're not able to show you where the mind is. They can show you where the brain is, the gray matter is, etc. But they cannot show you where the intelligence is. Right? So this is what it means by subtle. You really can't point to what it is. And thirdly, the false ego essentially is what is basically cheating us into believing that we are this material body and not the spirit soul. So what do? We are so busy looking after the material body, and we do not look after our spirit soul. The spirit soul is like a bird in the cage of the human body. We are busy combing our hair, washing ourselves up, putting up perfumes, makeup, etc. But we forget to feed the bird. Just like, this lady, a 70-year-old lady, she's just bought a beautiful parrot, and the parrot is in a nicely gold casted cage. She is so busy polishing the cage on a daily basis, right? Polishing it, making the whole house of the bird nice, but she forgot to feed the very bird. After a few days, the bird died, right? Because she was so focused on the material, she forgot the living entity, the actual living entity. So towards the end of today's class, Hui will actually explain to you how we can actually take care of our spirit soul. Okay. The third part of it is the gross body, this material body, which we are so busy looking after. What is it made of? It is made of earth, water, fire, air, and ether or space. You know, scientists, they have actually measured how much of earth is there, how much of water, how much of that acidity or that fire in our body is the air, the space. They have put a dollar value based on the chemical combination or the chemical composition, and they derived that the actual cost of our physical body, this gross body, is less than 20 US dollars. This body is worth less than 20 US dollars. And yet we have got so much of ego. I'm the one who did this. This whole family is because of me. This company is because of me. Okay. So when you see this picture, once again, just remember, it is not just the physical body which we need to be concerned about. We need to be concerned about that spiritual spark which is in our body. And we also need to be understanding of this fact that there is the mind, the intelligence, and the false ego. You can go to any of the top universities in the world. They do not teach you concepts like the mind, the intelligence, the false ego, the spirit soul. You know, our universities are just focused on the gross elements, the material elements. We have forgotten who we actually are. So, who controls the mind? Earlier on, I mentioned you have the mind, the intelligence, and the false ego. The intelligence is that discerning entity which can actually control the mind. But for the intelligence to really take control of the mind, we need to ensure that the intelligence is activated. What I mean by activated is the intelligence need to be so spiritually uplifted that it can tell the mind, oh mind, don't do this. Because if you engage in this, in the long run, this is going to be detrimental for you. Right? If our intelligence is spiritualized by the process which, one of the processes which Hui Mataji will be speaking about later on, then you realize that, wow, because the intelligence is spiritualized, the mind can be spiritualized too. When the intelligence is spiritualized, the mind is spiritualized, the passenger who is the soul will be able to live a really balanced life. Once the soul is able to live a balanced life, the soul can then ensure that the mind can control all the senses. Okay, what to watch, what to hear, what to eat, what to touch, etc. Okay, so we are, before I came to understand this philosophy, even now I'm still in the material conception, right? But it's like, when we are in this material conception that we are just this physical body, we have so much of unrealistic expectations on ourselves. There's a gap between expectation and what the reality is. And sometimes because of that, we lose faith in ourselves. So that was the first keyword which I told you to remember: competition. Competition. The second one is expectations. How do we manage expectations? And that's a step towards overcoming anxiety. The first part of managing expectations is understanding that this material world is actually a difficult place. So M. Scott Peck, in his book, The Road Less Traveled, he says that life is difficult. This is a great truth, one of the greatest truths. It is a great truth because once we truly see this truth, we can transcend it. Once I know that and I accept and believe that life is difficult, once I believe this, then actually I transcend it. Once we truly know that life is difficult, once we truly understand and accept it, then life is no longer difficult actually. Because once it is accepted, the fact that life is difficult no longer matters because you have already accepted it. This is a real paradigm shift for me and for many people. Because they always expected that, oh, if I put in this much of effort, the results will come in. Right? It's going to be a peaceful place. The economy is just going to get better and better and better. No such thing as a pandemic. Right? No such thing as retrenchments. No, the reality is far from this. Pandemics will be there, right? Wars will be there. Lots of distresses in our lives will always be there. But once we understand that this is what the material world is, it becomes easier for us to actually accept it. That's the first part of expectations. And once we accept it, then we also tell ourselves that maybe it's not necessary to be anxious about something. Right? So this is the nature of the place. In Sanskrit, the earth is actually called Dukhalayam, a place of misery. Right? It's also called Asaswatam, meaning it's a place of misery because it is temporary. We are here for what, 100 years? This morning I read this lady who is still, manning a shop in Bukit Timah, maybe 102 years old, 110, blah, blah, blah. But it's a temporary world, right? Why misery? Because birth, old age, disease, and death are really painful experiences. Okay? So just because there are conditions of misery in this world, we don't have to be miserable because we have already set our expectations in the right lever. Right? The second part of expectation, number one, is of course, M. Scott Peck has mentioned, life is tough, life is going to be difficult. The moment you understand and expect and have set your expectations, it's no longer going to be difficult because you've already accepted. The second part is actually mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita again, where Krishna, this is in the middle of a battlefield, right? Where Krishna, he's explaining that this to the soldier, right? The warrior, not soldier, the warrior Arjuna, that you have a right to perform your duty. You need to do your duty to the best of your ability, but know that you may not always be successful. There are many other factors which account for whether the outcome is going to be a success, a solid success, a mid success, or a failure. And Krishna tells Arjuna, never consider yourself as the cause of the result of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. So essentially what Krishna is basically saying to Arjuna is that when we are in this world, we may try for many, many, many things. right? We may have goals, etc. in our life, right? Maybe as a student, we have certain, we want to have certain grades. Maybe when we are working, we want to hit a certain position in the corporate world. Maybe when we are single, we want to get married. Maybe we want to have some kind of influence or impact we want to make in this world. Each of us have different goals. And you know what your goals and what you desire to achieve in this world, they can actually end up making us really stressed out. They can end up making people full of anxiety, worry, and feeling burnt out. So, what Krishna basically is explaining in this verse is that you are not in control of the results. We are not the controller of the results that we are going to achieve in this world. And you may ask, oh my God, that's really depressing. I'm not in control. Yes, you are not in control, right? You can act, you can give your best intention, you can give your fullest attention. But after that, after you have done all those things, you are not in control of the results. The exam paper may be really difficult. It may be an easy exam paper, but after moderation, you may not get the results. So essentially what Krishna is telling Arjuna and to all of us is that there are many other factors beyond our control which are determining the outcome of our activities. You know, Pasaji, your former president of Indonesia, he regarded Krishna as his hero. You know, sometimes you just go to YouTube or TikTok and just do a search on your former president's name, and Krishna, he will say that Krishna is my hero. I learned a lot from the Bhagavad Gita. Right?
Okay, well, which president is that?
Not the current one. Before this, Widodo, is it?
Jokowi?
Jokowi.
Okay.
So Krishna says that there are many other factors beyond our control which are determining the outcomes of our activities. So what the Bhagavad Gita is basically teaching us is that success in life is not about achieving a result. Success in life is in giving the best of yourself to achieve your goal. Giving your best to achieve the goal. In other words, don't try to be the best. Simply do the best. If people can understand this one simple thing, that you are not in control of your results, so much of stress would actually disappear in our lives. Because we think we are in control of our results. And when our results don't turn out as we have expected, we will feel depressed, we will feel hopeless, we will feel substandard. We feel as though we are a failure. And we feel just like we want to give up. But for someone who understands this philosophy of spirituality, they understand that I'm not in control of the results. If the results go good, or if it doesn't go according to my estimation, that doesn't necessarily have to have a bearing on my happiness. Okay. So once again, number one, I'm not in control of the results. Number two, my happiness is not dependent on the results. My happiness is dependent on my giving the best of my ability and trying. And that's the reason why mothers will always tell their kids before the sports day, oh, it's not about winning. It's about giving your best. Right? Shin, do you remember your mom or dad telling you this before sports day?
Actually, they're very chill with me.
Wonderful. All right. So that's what Krishna is saying, about detachment. The success is in the endeavor, not in the result. And you become very, very, very peaceful. And then in failure, you don't become depressed. And in success, you don't become proud and complacent, because you realize it wasn't just me that created the success. The entire ecosystem, the entire universe actually came together to let it happen for my best. Okay, so that second part of expectations. Now let's go to what the Bhagavad Gita teaches about regulation. Time check. Okay, I've got another 7 more minutes. I'll try to finish it really fast. So what the Bhagavad Gita says about regulation is that when we are very, very extravagant in the matter of eating, when we overeat, when we oversleep, right? When we over defend or take care of ourselves, and when we overindulge in enjoyment, mating, etc., which are the demands of the body, this can block advancement in the practice of yoga. You know, most people get stressed out and burn out and full of anxiety and worry because their life is out of balance. Essentially, what Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita is you just need balance. Eat right, sleep right, all your activities, do it in a balanced manner, right? Somehow or other in the world we are living in today, there are so many demands, there are so many responsibilities. It's like juggling act after act to fit everything in. You have to earn money, and then you have to spend time with the family, then you have to take care of your health, then you need time to pursue different hobbies and interests, and all of these things are actually competing for our attention. And what happens is that we become completely imbalanced. So what Krishna is therefore saying is that we need to regulate our habits, and fitting everything is the key to basically being free from stress, burnout, anxiety, and things like this. Right? So we need to become conscious. We need to become conscious of everything which we want to take in our life. The problem is, in our life, we take on unnecessary things. We spend too much of time on things that deserve less attention, and we neglect the things that really need the investment of our heart. We tend to prioritize the easy thing, but we keep on putting off the difficult things. And we tend to focus on the things that people will appreciate what we do, but not necessarily the things which will help us to achieve our potential. And therefore, for most people in the world, they've got the priority order wrong in their life. And they are prioritizing the wrong things. And when you prioritize the wrong things, then what will happen is we become imbalanced. Right? So once again, this imbalance is causing the anxiety, the stress. Therefore, Krishna is giving a very, very simple solution. Be conscious, number one, of your activities. Regulate it so that there is no burnout. And this idea was also stolen by Mr. Kavi in his 7 habits of highly effective people. All right. If you look at the 7th habit, which is sharpening the saw, the balanced self-renewal, right? Essentially what he's saying is that, I'll just try to make this a little bigger, right? Okay, right? So we need that social, that emotional balance where we contribute back to society, right? We are of service to others. And then internally, we feel secure because we are engaging in spiritual activities. Physically, right, we balance it by ensuring that we have the strength, we are exercising, there's endurance, there's flexibility in our body. From the spiritual perspective, this is what Stephen Covey is saying. We need to take out time and have a space to engage in a spiritual practice. We need to immerse into sharpening this saw so that once the saw is sharp, we can then go into the external corporate world and give our very best. If our axe or saw is not sharpened, how are we going to be engaging in the material world? Okay. And it's important for us to engage in pearls of wisdom like what the Bhagavad Gita is teaching, etc. So with that, we come to the end of the first part of today's class. Essentially, we spoke about what is anxiety, how does it differentiate from our stress, regular stress. We spoke about the positive elements or the positive side of stress and the negative side of stress. We spoke about the three key words. Number one, competition. Number two, expectations. And number three, having a balanced life. All right. Any questions before Hui takes over on sharpening of the axe? Any questions? Pasaji? Sheen?
Yeah, I have one question.
Sure. I hope you don't mind. I have some water.
Okay. Now, the first time when I see the word anxiety, I'm trying to figure out, what sort of anxiety I've been having since, since kids until now. And sometimes when try to figure out, we can't figure out, what it seems like our life is just okay, just fine, And
That's
then,
very good.
and I'm trying to figure out, what really makes me, stressful, that cause me like leading to the bad habitual, action, this kind of stuff. So far I couldn't find. I don't know whether is that too good to be true, or I do not know. What do you think?
I think, so the World Health Organization is now looking at mental wellness, etc., especially after the pandemic. Before that, you hardly hear of people speaking about this. And today is like, wow, it's a big thing, etc. So I think, you and I, Touchwood, I think we are blessed. We have somehow being able to manage our anxiety levels and therefore, or manage our stress levels where it did not really go beyond into the anxiety spectrum, and maybe it could be because we are able to manage our expectations. Number two, we see competition in a very healthy manner. And number three, because we have regulated our lives. So be blessed. Now bring it to the next level. Yeah. Good stuff. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, so now over to Hui. Essentially,
make
she will
a
be
comment
speaking. Oh, yes.
about that. Sometimes we are just so numb to our pain that we do not know that we are in pain. And it's only when we are quietened down, we are calmer, then we realize that, oh, I'm actually experiencing this pain for all my life without me realizing it. I don't know if you have this experience. It could be a physical thing. It could be a more emotional and mental thing. Have you seen people who are addicted to something and they don't feel that they're addicted and they don't see that they have a problem with it? For example, addicted to gambling, and you see that they keep buying certain kind of bet, and then when we are not the ones doing it, we think, why is this guy keep doing it? And then when you go and talk to the person don't think that they have a problem. It's like, no, I just do for fun. It could be drinking, it could be smoking. They tell you I'm a social smoker, but if you observe them, you could see there is an attachment to whatever that they're addicted to. but they don't realize it. They don't see that they have a problem. It could be anything. It could be a little bit something more deeper is abuse. People who are abused don't think that they are being abused. Some of them, not all, to a certain degree. So sometimes because we're so numb to whatever condition that we have, we do not have the clarity to see what we are going through. And which is why having a mindfulness practice is very helpful, that it can help us to get a little bit more clear in our head, to start noticing our pattern and our, you can call, attachments. And then we start to, first step is always awareness, right? I'm doing this. For example, I like to eat chocolate a lot. It's a kind of addiction already. But I'm aware, only when I'm aware, then I can start to take action about it.
That's a
I
wonderful
think I agree.
point.
You got the
Yeah.
point. You got the point. We got the point.
Thanks, Hui, for sharing your realization. It's like sometimes when we are within the frame, we can't see it. We need to actually come out of the frame to actually realize that, wow, you begin to see things differently. When we are too close to the problem, you can't really see it. But when you sort of
Zoom
separate
out.
yourself, when you come out of this frame, then you begin to see it in a different light. Thanks a lot. Thanks for that. Yeah. Okay, so we will be speaking a little bit more extensively on what mantra meditation is all about. I can share with you that for me, it has really provided an amazing impact. Yeah, providing amazing impact in providing me with hope, providing me with a slightly higher consciousness than previously. And it has also assisted me in somehow subduing, my the monkey mind. Yeah, it has helped me in a big way. It has allowed me to become a little bit more mindful, and therefore I would urge you to just spend 3 to 5 minutes or maybe even more going through what Hui is doing it. This is like she's really immersing you into this practice. Try it. If you like it, you can do it more often, and be in touch with Hui. And I hope to invite you again for our next sessions. I'm so sorry. I'm still in the office. I need to rush back home after this, and therefore Hui will be facilitating the conversations from now onwards. Thank you very much for spending your Friday evening with us. I really appreciate it. Hui, over to you, please.
Thank you, Pradeep. We'll see you next session. Thank you for educating us.
Not at all.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing and during your office time. I appreciate that.
Oh, not at all, not at all. I mean, office is over. I'm just sitting in the office, using the
Okay.
office premises. That's it.
Okay.
Okay, Pat. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Shin, thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And
Thank you.
Zijai, thank you very much. Over to you, Hui.
Okay. So, Zhe, have you been to this session before? I can't remember. Is it your first time here also?
Yeah, it's the first time. I first time to join this.
No, I know. There's another lady called Zijie.